Men and women of Reddit who caught their significant others cheating. How did you do that? And what was your reaction? My ex-husband and his family smoked a lot of pot. Still do. His sister, kids, and nanny were visiting from out of state for a few weeks. When it was time to fly home, they left their stash at my ex-Mill's house because they didn't want to take it on the plane. My ex asked if I would pick it up because I was nearby. Stupidly, I agree. I don't smoke and I was willing to carry it in my car for him. To my surprise, I found a note from the nanny to my ex saying she was in love with him and she was so happy for the time they had together. Obviously she thought he would get the weed instead of me. While it was incredibly painful at the time, I am definitely living my best life 15 years later. My ex-husband was an early adopter of sending dick pics. I got his phone to get the numbers of his friends to invite them to a surprise birthday party while he was sleeping off a hangover. And there they were in his outbarks. This was more than 12 years ago. Worst one I know of is an acquaintance of mine. Came home from work one day and found his missus having sex with his dad. That blew up all over Facebook and became a local drama fest where people tried to organize a shunning of the dad and missus. I remember it well because, well, I know people cheat. But with your partner's father? Come on. Wife was acting unusual for a few weeks. She would want to spend time by herself on the weekends, and when she came home at night from work she would often sit in the driveway for 20 minutes on the phone. I'm not dumb. I bought a voice activated digital recorder and stuck it in her car. I knew what I needed to know in less than 24 hours. I had some really good friends in the next town over where my girlfriend lived. And they figured it out for me. They were super gentle about it. And patient with me through my denial. We were together for 5 years. Living together for around 4. I came home from work early. When I got out of my car I saw her peek through the blinds to see who was outside. I walked in the door to her co-worker on the couch. Obviously uncomfortable and clothes messy, and her locked in the bathroom. I wanted to pummel the shit out of him then and there. But he was a trained MMA fighter. And I wilder left the house that night with more than a broken heart. Went to a friend's house for a while. They started dating the next day. Shit sucks. It took a while for me to get trust back in relationships. Edit. Her co-worker had been to many gatherings. And no, I wouldn't beat a woman's ass even though, yes, she was more deserving. Thank you all for the comments. It was 10+ years ago. And I'm doing good. Went for my yearly checkup and tested positive for chlamydia. Turns out my ex was sleeping around. Edit. Apparently false positives are common with these types of tests, so have yours so tested as well. I hope you're in a relationship where you can openly talk about such things. She confessed to her mom. Then mother-in-law called her other daughter and told her. Sister-in-law then called me and told me. She let me listen in on a 3-way call to her mom and tried to convince mom to tell me, but she refused, which basically confirmed it. He went to Hawaii for a business trip without his wife and kids. Like a good wife. I packed his clothes before he left and unpacked his dirty laundry when he returned home. I found a tiny pair of white cotton panties, no lace, in his suitcase. He had recently dropped a lot of weight, 100 lbs, and played it off that he had bought them for himself. They had no label and were simple bikinis, so theoretically could have been men's as well. It did sort of explain the pretty brunette that followed him off the plane at the airport and kept looking at my kids and I at the luggage carousel. What an ass to make his side piece come face to face with his wife and kids. I made sure he wore those panties at least once a week for the remaining few months we were together. I set out his clothes every day and he couldn't protest. It wasn't a big damn breaking moment. It was a lot of little things. Like how she'd cancel plans at the last second. Or the random phone calls from unknown numbers she'd get. This was back before spam calls were an epidemic. Or how her phone was mysteriously off one night when I needed to get a hold of her. I had my suspicions and then finally it clicked into place when I did some Instagram snooping and found a guy who followed her who posted a selfie wearing a very unique jacket that belonged to her. I confronted her the next day. She denied it. Tears. Begging. All of that. I dumped her and walked away. The next day I messaged that guy on Instagram and he confirmed everything. Had no idea I existed. He dumped her too. Last I heard she's an EMT in Utah, Wyoming. Hope she figured out how not to be a garbage person. I owned a house with my fiance registered sign. I woke up in the middle of the night and he wasn't in bed. I went searching. His truck and another vehicle were in the driveway. Then I went upstairs and found the guest bedroom was locked. After barging my way in, I found him with another woman in bed. That bed happened to be my childhood bed. He forced me out of the room. Literally grabbed me by the neck and pushed me out and closed the door back. I knew I couldn't do anything at that point. So I called his parents who lived a few blocks away. His dad showed up and another fight broke out. I ended up leaving and staying at his parents until dawn. I moved out that weekend and let the house foreclose. 9 years later, it's finally off my credit report. I'm happily married to an amazing man and we own a beautiful home together. I found a used condom on the bathroom floor. I just emailed him a 30-day end of tenancy notice. I own the house. I was married. Out of the blue while at work I get an email that says, husband's name, Otis wife. When I open the email it lists off a name and says, husband's name, married to her. Check on Facebook. English was not the first language. This was overseas. So I do, and what do I see? Tons and tons and tons and tons of pictures of a woman with my husband. The woman and her kids with my husband. The woman and her family with my husband. I was stunned to say the least. It was the 6th of October 2017. 7 months after I almost died from an ectopic pregnancy. Yet we were trying at that point to have kids. After work I went home and started throwing all of his stuff in the dumpster. He was out of town at the time so I had plenty of time to do it. Spent all of Saturday and Sunday throwing everything he owned in the dumpster. A month later I moved to a new apartment and waited until then to tell him I was divorcing him. FCK, I didn't expect that ending. Ex-wife actually asked me for her blessing to commit adultery with another married man. She was shocked when I said I don't support it. She went ballistic, has severe mental health issues. Went and did it anyway and ended up in a psych ward. 2 marriages ended and now the 2 cheaters are engaged. Little devastated at first. Blessing in disguise. I caught my ex assisting a chick and telling her how he missed her on my birthday. I was young at the time and reacting with crying and yelling. If it ever happened now I would just get up and leave. No point in trying to mend the relationship because it's near impossible to gain the trust that was lost. Edit. Spelling error. Edit. Thanks for the award. It's really sad how many people have gone through this same experience. I hope all of you are in a better place now. Long-term relationships for 3 years. I took him to the hospital because he had unknown rashes on him. Long story short, he was diagnosed with syphilis. I was tested. And was not. No idea how I dodged that. I got treated anyway. I was so stupid in my early 20s. Back then Facebook used to display on your profile stuff like don't say or to liked a photo and everything you did. I noticed he liked a photo of a girl that seemed to be someone he had recently added. So I checked her profile and she was one of those girls who think they won because men cheat on their partners with them. She had everything public. Photos with him. Bragging about the texts they exchanged, etc. So I engineered a way to befriend her roommate. I would then find out she was bringing other dudes home besides my boyfriend, and when I confronted him I also let him know about who else she was sleeping with and for him to get an STD test. My now ex-husband demanded constant access to all of my social media and cell phone messages and was constantly accusing me of cheating even though he had no reason to think I would do that. I had nothing to hide. Never even thought of cheating. I was watching our young kids 24/7 and didn't even have transportation since he accidentally totaled my car. One day I handed over my phone for him to check for other men and asked to see his. He hesitated but then handed it over. There was a long SZL text history with one of the teenage girls who works for him. He tells me he's in love with her and wants her to move in with us. I was in total shock. Dropped his phone, cracking it. He retaliated by breaking my laptop. I had come home from a 5-month cruise. My GF at the time was a court stenographer. So when she wasn't at the pier I figured she had a case or was catching up on transcripts. So I got a ride from my friend to see unfamiliar BMW in my driveway. I walk in to see her blowing some stranger on my couch. Keep in mind this was my house, not hers. I didn't say a word to her. I just started grabbing her shitty and throwing it in the front yard and called her father to come pick her up because her car was an old Quattro and in the shop. Again. And up to that point I was letting her drive mine until it was fixed. I will not bore you with the drama, but she was taken by the MAs instead of her dad. Dated a girl for about 2 years. Like 18 months into the relationship we're talking about moving in together. Then kinda out of nowhere she starts becoming distant and irritable. We ended up breaking up. Fast forward 3 months after the breakup, I found that Facebook has a section where messages from non-friends are kept. Turns out my then GF was banging her ex and the UPS driver that delivered to her store at the mall. She ended getting with the UPS driver and his 3 kids. Last I checked they're f***ing miserable and it brings me joy every time I think about it. Edit. In my messages was a note from the UPS driver's then wife. My ex not only cheated but broke up a marriage. A friend of mine was suspicious of her husband cheating, as he went to play soccer with friends way too often. He always came already showered as he would sweat playing. One day she sewed his soccer socks together. And when he came back all showered she saw the socks were still sewed. So he wasn't playing soccer at all. Edit. Spelled husband wrong. Edit 2. Woo, this blew up. Many people are commenting how this doesn't prove he was cheating. Just that he was lying. She later confronted him and he was indeed cheating. Also, many are saying clean socks would have been enough evidence. And that's true. I guess she didn't think that deep about it. This is almost word for word how the convo went. Me. You sleeping with so and so, her. Yay me. Want a divorce? Huh? Kinda me. I didn't catch her. She told me I wasn't a real man and that's why she did it. She just told me everything she hated about me. Went on to why I'm worthless, pulled over. Kicked me out the car and I had to walk back to my place. As far as my reaction went, I went home. Cried. Went to bed. Stayed in bed for a few days. Thought I was a terrible person for a few weeks. Cut my holiday leave short and went back to work early to get my mind off things. Edit. This was a while ago now and I'm definitely in a much better place in my life. I found out he had signed up for a bunch of apps. Such as Ashley Madison, Tinder, and Bumble. He would message his mutual acquaintances asking if they'd be up for massages, etc. I blamed myself for years that he wasn't interested in sex with me because I'd had a baby and gained a little weight. Nope. He just enjoyed contacting other women for sex more. We're in the middle of our divorce now. He doesn't understand why I'm wrecking our marriage because of a few indiscretions. Edit. Never. 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 Never say you're single on Reddit because of the possible direct messages. I had my suspicions but it was her who ended up telling me. I went into the relationship thinking, wow, I don't deserve this girl. Way out of my league. She couldn't help but remind me how much better he was several times and made sure to rub it in my face. My reaction was a spiral into deep depression. For someone that has very low self-esteem, being cheated on is one of the worst feelings. It feels like it confirms all your worst thoughts about yourself. Edit. I just want to say thanks to all the encouraging comments. This was some years ago and I'm in a happy relationship. I still struggle with depression, but I think even without this incident I'd still be depressed, but I'm working on it. To anyone currently experiencing this, It's not the end of the world despite it feeling that way. You are worth more than you know. And I know you will see that someday. I caught my wife after she passed away from cancer. Worst feeling ever. Caught between unending love, mourning and absolute anger. Not me but sister-in-law. She was 7 months pregnant and her husband's phone was going off during the night. She picked it up and looked at it when he went to the bathroom and it was a text from a girl talking about how excited she was to be a stepmom. Went to bed. And left my husband and a mutual female friend downstairs drinking. Went down to say one last goodnight. And they were out back smoking. Opened the back door. And they fell on top of me. Clothes in the process of being removed. He was sorting through his pictures and a naked lady caught my eye. So later that day I went on his phone. I would never usually do this. And found many naked girls on his phone. Screenshots of snaps. I also found pictures of me I didn't know he took. I called my best friend and cried. She told to confront him so I did. His response was it's normal for men to keep their PRN on their phones and was smug about his response until I mentioned they were screenshots. My ex and I used to share a computer. She was getting messages from her first boyfriend. I didn't bother reading them. Because I figured he was just saying hi or wanted to know where she was in life now. A couple of months later, I'm on the computer. And she insisted that she log out while I'm there. Okay. Things feel weird here. Another couple of days pass. And she wants to visit her parents. Okay, cool. I keep the kids and she goes off. I get a call from one of my buddies who works at a hotel where my ex and I are both from saying my wife just checked in with another guy. So long story short. Divorced her. FCKU Stephanie. Edit fixed a word. Edit 2. I've been trying to reply and upvote everyone. But I gotta take a break. It's been fun. I'll reply and upvote the rest when this isn't relevant anymore. Was dating a girl during college. Took her on a vacation to the beach where I had planned on proposing to her as we had been together 4+ years. While she was in the shower checked her phone looking for something. Saw several pictures of her making out with someone from her college. Had apparently been happening for several months. Was an awkward drive home for sure. Dropped her off at the airport a day after ending things. She ended up becoming an anti-vax and essential oils believer so dodge a bullet there. He took a phone call from her in front of me and because, I guess, he thought he was being slick. He started flirting with her in front of me. He ended up sexually harassing me after the relationship was over and I got him in hot water for that. He never did it again and was told if he even talked to me again, he'd get fired. I ended up leaving that job a few months later. He broke up with me after 8 years together. Seemingly out of nowhere, I look back and see the signs now. He told me I was the cause of his severe depression, attempted suicide. I had no clue he was even suffering with mental health issues. Obviously I carried a huge amount of guilt knowing I was the reason someone didn't want to be alive and took the breakup really rough. Our cell phones were on the same bill and it would get sent in the mail. 3 months after we broke up I had the thought to check through the calls list. There was a number he was calling at all hours of the day, night, every day. Decided to look back through previous bills from when we were together and sure enough same number and same volume of calls as far as 6 months prior to our breakup. Called the number and a woman answered. Confronted him and he fessed up. I had a very hard time processing the fact that someone I trusted for 8 years would purposely make me feel like I was an awful human. When it was actually him all along. I knew he had been unfaithful in the past but I didn't really love him so it was not that bad. However, I was bartending one night and this drunk chick walks up and tells me that I looked familiar. She then proceeds to yell, "Oh, my friend is f***ing your husband." Full stop. So I walked into the beer keg cooler with a bottle of vodka. I downed some shots and went back to work. I held it in that I knew for a few months while I hired an attorney and figured out my next move. I had 3 kids to think of too. So I moved with my kids back home to Texas and got divorced. Now, I'm engaged to my childhood best friend and we plan to marry in Yosemite next year. He's the complete opposite of my ex. Kind, supportive, and loving. So FCK that Sasquatch looking cheater.